please the court yard of defense call Zach Hughes.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated. Please state your name for the record.
Zachary David Hughes.
Zach, how old are you?
I'm 32 years old.
Are you married?
No.
Do you have any brothers or sisters?
Yes, I do.
Tell this jury about your brothers and sisters.
I have 5 brothers and sisters. One is my biological brother, Eli, and the rest are my adopted siblings.
At one point, did you have 6 siblings?
Yes, I did.
We'll talk about that in a minute. Where were you born?
I was born in San Luis Obispo, California.
Did you grow up in the entirety of your childhood in California?
No, I did not.
From California, where did you and your family move?
We moved to Southwest Virginia when I was 11.
While you were still living in California, did you discover that you had an aptitude for music?
Yes, I did.
What, if anything, did your mom or dad do by way of an instrument to help you learn how to play music?
When I was maybe 4 or 5, my dad found an old Gulbranson upright piano at a yard sale, and he bought it for, I think, $300 and rolled it down the street to our house. So I had an instrument to tinker on when I was young, even before I started piano lessons.
Describe, just in general to this jury, what was your, while you were in California and early on in Virginia, what was your home life like? What was it like to grow up in your house?
I had a great childhood. I have great parents. They raised my biological brother and I before we adopted in a Christian household. They taught us good values, the importance of good morals and service to others, and they supported me in every way imaginable, and I'm very grateful for them.
Zach, you may want to back up just a little bit from the microphone. I think you're getting just a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a little bit better. Thanks. Describe for the jury, you talked about your Christian values in the household. Describe for the jury sort of the, early on at least, the connection between your parents supporting you playing music and the Christian dynamic in your family.
Yeah, originally when I was 9, my parents started me on piano lessons. Our pastor's daughter taught piano lessons, and my dad wanted me to play hymns and family devotions.
You testified earlier that you and your family moved to Virginia. Tell this jury where you and your family moved in Virginia.
It was a town called Abingdon. It's right next to Bristol, Virginia, which is known for the NASCAR Speedway. Describe
to the jury what your family's residence was like. Where did you live, and sort of describe that dynamic.
We moved to a small 3.5-acre farm. My parents liked the idea of raising some farm animals and giving my brother and I the opportunity to do physical work on a farm, and just the opportunity to be close to nature and grow up understanding the value of hard work.
In 2005, did your family grow beyond just you and your brother and your parents?
Yes.
Describe for the jury how your family grew in 2005.
The church we were a part of at a time really encouraged adoption, especially for families or couples who weren't able to have kids at that point in their life or at all. And as a result of this belief in the church that it was good to adopt, there were emails that would be passed around occasionally, and there was an email that was passed around with a photo of 5 Russian siblings who were up for adoption in Russia. And my family saw these photos, and our heart really went out to these kids. At first, we thought they were all boys because their heads were all shaven for lice, and they were all wearing sort of the same kind of clothes, hand-me-downs. But there were 3 girls and 2 boys. And after a lot of prayer and thought and discussion about it, we decided we wanted to adopt these kids because essentially if we didn't, who would?
So, just briefly, let's talk about these kids. How old was the oldest child at the time your parents adopted them?
She was 10.
What was her name?
Her Russian name was Yelena, but we gave all the kids American names. So her name was Grace when we adopted her.
So Grace was 10. How old was the youngest?
18 months.
We're going to come back to them in just a little bit. At some point, did you and your family move to South Carolina from Virginia?
Yes.
How old were you when your family moved to South Carolina from Virginia?
I believe I was either 15 or 16.
Where did you and your family move in South Carolina?
We moved to Travelers Rest in Greenville County.
During this time, describe for the jury what is going on in your music progression, your life as a musician, and how you're progressing.
Like I said, I started piano at 9, and when we moved to Virginia, I became increasingly more interested and motivated in it. So by the time I was, say, 14, 15, I was practicing on average 6 to 8 hours a day. We were homeschooled, so this allowed me to do this. And by the time we had moved to Travelers Rest, I was very convinced that I wanted to pursue music as a career.
You testified you were practicing a lot. During this time, did your father do anything to provide the rest of the family some peace while you were practicing so much?
Yes, I like to practice late into the night and into the early morning hours, so my dad actually built me a soundproofed room out in the garage so I could do this without waking the neighbors.
So as your musical capabilities improved and increased, while you were in high school, did you participate in any music festivals, specifically regional music festivals?
Yes, many.
Did you ever win a prestigious regional music festival?
Yes, several.
All right. Describe to the jury what opportunity you were given in connection with the South Carolina Philharmonic Orchestra.
In 2011, I participated in a high school piano festival in Columbia, South Carolina at the University of South Carolina called the Southeastern Piano Festival. And part of this festival, there was an international concerto competition. A concerto is a piece for a solo instrument in orchestra, so in this case, solo piano with orchestra. And that was the Arthur Fraser International Piano Competition, and I was awarded first prize. And part of first prize was the opportunity at a later date to perform a full concerto with the South Carolina Philharmonic. And maybe a year later, we did Beethoven's Emperor Concerto.
You testified about high school and your progression as a musician in high school. I want to talk about college. When it came to go for you to go to college, where did you apply to go to college?
I applied to 5 different conservatories in the country.
Were you accepted to any of those conservatories?
I was accepted to 3.
Where did you decide to go to college?
I went to the Juilliard School in Manhattan.
The year you applied, what percentage of applicants were granted admission to Juilliard?
I believe it was 7.2%.
And you were one of those musicians.
Yes.
When you were accepted, what, if any, inducements or incentives did Juilliard give you to attend their institution?
They offered me a generous financial aid package and a merit-based scholarship.
When did you begin your education at the Juilliard School?
I matriculated in the fall of 2011.
I want to talk about what you did while you were there. While you were at Juilliard, did you have an opportunity to participate in an international music festival?
Yes, I did.
Please tell the jury about that.
There is an international music students festival in Kyoto, Japan, which is called I think the Rome Music Foundation sets it up, and they try to get music students from all over the world, from different countries. So they get a sampling of different countries, and they have a relationship with Juilliard. So an email was sent out to the student body asking if anyone wanted to participate, and I was selected to represent the States in Kyoto for this festival.
And so how many students from around the world participated in this festival?
Maybe 15 to 20.
And how many from America were selected to participate?
1.
And that was just you.
Yes.
Did you graduate from the Juilliard School?
Yes, I did.
When did you graduate?
In May of 2015.
And what was the degree you obtained upon graduation?
A bachelor's of music and piano performance.
Just briefly describe to the jury, after you graduated, what did you do in the music field for employment immediately upon graduation?
I did what a lot of conservatory graduates do who decide not to immediately pursue a higher degree. I did a lot of freelancing. I did some solo gigs, playing concerts. I did some accompanying. I taught some students. And I even took on some work in restaurants to supplement my income.
At some point, were you given the opportunity to be on staff with the Knoxville Symphony?
Yes, I was.
When did you receive, or when was that opportunity given to you?
I heard about the audition, that I heard that a spot had opened up for principal keyboardist in the Knoxville Symphony, and I heard about it 3 days beforehand. So last minute, I learned a bunch of excerpts and auditioned, and I was fortunate enough to get the job in 2017.
You talk about the principal pianist. Tell the jury what the principal pianist, what that title means and what your function was.
It is a principal keyboardist, so it's basically any instrument part in the orchestra that has a keyboard I would be playing. So it could be piano, harpsichord, synthesizer, celesta.
When did you begin your employment as the principal pianist for the Knoxville Symphony?
In 2017.
When did your employment end with the Knoxville Symphony?
In 2018.
What did you decide to do in 2018 that required you to leave the orchestra? Or the symphony, rather.
I decided to enlist with the Marine Corps.
So, you're a classically trained pianist. You have an opportunity with a symphony to perform with them, which is regular employment, and you decide to leave that and go serve your country in the Marine Corps. Is that correct?
Yes.
Describe to the jury why you decided to leave your job with the Symphony to serve your country in the Marine Corps.
Since about my sophomore year of college, it had been something I'd been thinking about, military service. And obviously there's a window of time that you're able to do that in as you get older. You hit age limits and so forth. And it had just always been something I was interested in, the service of others, service to others aspect of it. I felt like, in a sense, I owed a debt to my country and to do some military service. And I also wanted the opportunity to experience a difficult training environment. And I figured the Marines they had a reputation of being the hardest, so that's the branch I decided to go for.
What, if any, attributes of your childhood or the home environment as you grew up, what, if any, of those attributes played into your desire to join the Marine Corps?
I think the way my parents had always instilled in us a good work ethic and an important sense of just a moral duty to others, it seemed like a very good opportunity for me to further develop some of these things in myself.
You testified that initially you enlisted in the Marine Corps. Ultimately, did your journey continue as an enlisted person in the Marine Corps?
No.
Why not? Tell this jury.
I was speaking with my recruiter, and they ask you a lot of questions, just trying to figure out who you are and what aptitude you might have for different aspects of the service you're going for. And he found out that I had a college degree, which meant, unbeknownst to me, that I was eligible for officer candidate school. So as soon as they found that out, they tried to funnel me into, it's a different recruiting program, but they got me in touch with the officer selection officer and encouraged me to go the officer route.
During the selection process for officer candidate school, were you living in Tennessee at the time?
Yes, I was.
And briefly, if you would, describe for the jury during that period in Tennessee what the process was that was used for officer candidate school, or OCS, for selection.
It's a little different than recruiting. You have to go through a pretty rigorous selection process to even be invited to OCS, so you spend a lot of time with your OSO, or your officer selection officer, and it's their job to essentially train you up and get you ready so that you can pass the review board to get an invitation. So when I was living in Tennessee, I was doing a lot of training with him, preparing for this.
In Tennessee at the time, was there a board that also was tasked with reviewing applications for OCS?
Yes, there was.
And the cycle where you participated or your application was evaluated, do you know how many applicants the board authorized to go forward with OCS during that cycle?
One.
Was that your application?
Yes, it was.
Let's talk about OCS. At the time you began your journey in the Marine Corps, did Marine Corps personnel try to push you to a different area than you wanted to go to?
Yes, they did.
Describe to this jury what they asked you to do or what they wanted you to do.
As a recruiter, there are different boxes that I think you get bonuses in a certain sense if you can check, and one of those is the Marine Corps Band. So when they found out I had a background as a pianist, they really tried to get me to join the Marine Corps Band.
And when they asked you to join the Marine Corps Band, what did you say?
I declined. That wasn't the reason I wanted to join. I wanted to experience a different side of life, and I was interested in infantry.
Let's talk about OCS. during officer candidate school and your time there, were there metrics that were used by OCS personnel to evaluate physical fitness?
Yes.
Describe to the jury what those metrics were.
There's something called the PFT, the physical fitness test, and it consists of 3 areas. It's pull-ups to failure, maximum crunches under 2 minutes, and a 3-mile timed run.
What's a perfect score on that?
You can get a maximum of 100 in each of the 3 areas, so a perfect score would be 300.
What was your score?
294.
Ultimately, were you able to complete officer candidate school?
No, I was not.
Why were you not able to complete officer candidate school?
I was dropped after the 3rd week of officer candidate school due to level 3 stress fractures in both of my tibias.
So you had broken legs.
More or less.
At the time you were forced to leave officer candidate school, what percentage of the class were you in?
I was in the top 3%.
Do you remember how many members were in your OCS class at this time?
It was more than 400.
When you left OCS, how did you leave it with the Marine Corps?
The CEO of Quantico, which is where Marine Corps OCS is at, asked me to return. He essentially told me to go home, heal, retrain, and come back.
And we'll talk about this more, but ultimately, did you return?
No, I did not.
At this time, do you consider yourself a United States Marine?
No, I do not.
Why?
That's a title you have to earn, and since I haven't completed my training, I did not earn it.
After you suffered the fractures in your legs, where did you go to rehabilitate and to heal?
I went back to Traveler's Rest, where my family is, and I stayed with them while I was healing.
And just to put a time on this, is this approximately 2019? Is that right?
This is late January of 2019.
So now you're living with your family in Traveler's Rest here in Greenville County. While you were living with your family and rehabilitating your legs, were you presented with an opportunity to play music?
Yes, I was.
Describe to the jury what that opportunity was.
Through a series of mutual acquaintances, a woman by the name of Jeanette Wynn sent me an email and asked me if I would be willing to play an inaugural concert for their church. They had just received a gift of a very fine piano, and they wanted to have this concert sort of as a thank you to the donor and to show the congregation what it sounded like.
And so you were asked to perform using the gift of the piano that the church had received. Is that right?
Yes.
What was your response to that invitation?
At first I was inclined to say no because I was about 6 months out of practice. But the more I thought about it, it seemed like it would be a good thing to do while my legs were healing, so I accepted.
Describe to the jury, when did you play the inaugural concert on the piano, on that particular piano?
I believe it was in June of 2019.
Were you to be paid for the performance?
Yes, I was.
Describe to the jury what the arrangement for the payment would be.
It was a flat fee honorarium for this one concert.
And was the concert well received?
Yes, it was.
I want to talk about, just briefly, you mentioned Jeanette Wynn in your introduction to the Wynn family. You first met Jeanette Wynn and other members of the Wynn family in what year? Was it 2019?
In 2019, yes.
And over time, did you develop a friendship with the Wynn family.
Yes, I did.
While you developed this friendship, did you share with the Wynn family a long aspiration you had held in the music context?
Yes, I did.
Tell this jury what that aspiration was.
Growing up, Beethoven had always been my favorite composer and something of a personal hero. And in 2020, that was going to be the 250th birthday for him. So I had this dream that I really kind of put on the back burner when I was intending to go through OCS. Well, this dream of playing all 32 of his piano sonatas in a series of concerts. And in passing, I shared this with the Wynns.
And when you shared that aspiration you had with the Wynns, what was the reaction of the Wynns and their church members?
They were very enthusiastic about the idea.
And so their support of your dream, what effect did that have on your decision to go back to the United States Marine Corps?
Playing all of these sonatas is not something you can really just decide to do. You need a venue to present them at, so you need external support. And when I realized how enthusiastic the Wynns and their church congregation were about this, I realized that there was actually a real way to do this. So it presented me with a very difficult decision, whether to go back to OCS or whether to do this passion project of mine that I didn't think I was going to ever be able to do. And I eventually chose to do the Beethoven sonatas.
Let's talk about this project. You said 32 Beethoven sonatas.
Yes.
How many pages of music comprises the 32 sonatas?
It's over 600 pages.
If you played those from beginning to end, how long would it take to get through all 32 sonatas?
It depends how fast you go, but roughly 11 to 12 hours.
To your knowledge, how many people have been able to accomplish this endeavor?
I don't know the exact number. It's not many. It's something, probably only a dozen or two pianists have ever recorded. As to how many pianists have actually done it, I don't know if there's a record of that.
So let's talk about what you did to prepare. We're in 2019. When was the first concert on this project? When was that? When were you to perform that concert? When was that scheduled?
In January of 2020.
Where was that going to be? Where was that performance going to take place?
At the Wynns Church.
To prepare for this inaugural concert, where were you living?
At first I was living with my family, and at a certain point the Wynns extended an invitation to me to live with them because they had a piano that I could practice on, and I think they wanted to hear me practice.
So let's talk about January of 2020. Did you have your inaugural concert for this project in January 2020?
Yes.
And where did you perform this concert?
At the Wynns Church.
Were you to be compensated for this concert series?
The concerts were donation-based, and the church and I had agreed to split the proceeds 50-50.
Did you perform that concert in January of 2020?
Yes, I did.
How was it received?
Very well.
What percentage of the project, meaning how many sonatas, did you perform in the first concert?
I've played 3 sonatas in the first concert.
When was the next concert?
In February of 2020.
How many sonatas did you perform in the second concert?
I think 2.
When was the third concert?
In March of 2020.
How many sonatas did you perform in the March concert?
I believe 3.
Were you able to perform a fourth concert in April of 2020?
No, I wasn't.
Why not?
COVID had happened, which was making public gatherings impossible at the time.
So up until April of 2020, if you had to guess, what percentage of the project were you able to complete in those 3 performances?
Maybe a fifth to a quarter.
All right. During this time, were you working anywhere else to make a little extra money?
Yes, prior I had been working at Gianna downtown serving, and at some point I started working there again after COVID had happened, and I also took on some work with my dad painting houses and laying brick.
So when the pandemic hit, did that put a complete end to your music performances?
For the time being, yes.
At some point, did you decide to perform outside during the pandemic?
Yes, I did.
What instrument did you use to conduct performances outside?
I saved up some money and bought what was the best electronic keyboard on the market at the time, and I needed something portable, and I also wanted something that would do justice to the pieces I was trying to play, so it was a Roland V piano.
Where did you, or how did you get the money to pay for the piano?
Through working with my dad.
So after you got the piano, did you begin to play music on the streets of downtown Greenville?
Yes, I applied for a performer's permit for public spaces, and then I started several times a week taking my keyboard downtown and playing these sonatas at various spots in downtown Greenville.
When did you start performing in downtown Greenville?
It would have been sometime in the summer of 2020.
Where were some of your most frequent locations where you perform music in downtown Greenville?
Probably the most frequent was right in front of Spill the Beans at the entrance to Falls Park, where the fountain is.
I want to talk about an evening in August of 2020 while you were performing outside Spill the Beans. While you were performing, did anyone make contact with you and introduce himself to you?
Yes.
Who was that?
That was John Mello.
Was John Mello by himself, or was anyone with him?
He was with his daughter, Aida Mello.
How old, best you can recall, how old was Aida at the time?
She was 8.
Tell this jury about the interaction you had with John Mello when he first introduced himself when you were in front of Spill the Beans.
I didn't know who he was, but he came up and said he was a musician and asked if I'd be willing to take a request. He said his daughter's favorite piece was Claire de Lune, and I know that piece really well. It's a favorite piece of mine, so I played it for her.
What, if anything, did you observe about Aida while you were playing Claire de Lune?
Like I said, she was 8, so she was pretty young. I had taught a lot of kids before, so I had experience with kids that age and their attention spans, which tend to be very short. So I was really impressed. I could see her out of the corner of my eye, and she was just enraptured from start to finish. She wasn't running around, she wasn't on a device, she was just completely caught up in the music, and that made a big impression on me.
After you played John Mello's request, before he left, what, if anything, did he give you?
He gave me a business card.
Did you use it to make contact with him after that first meeting?
Yes, I sent him an email.
Why did you follow up and begin to communicate with John Mello after that first meeting?
I got the impression from a few things he said and from the card that he was in the rock and roll world, which that's something I had never had much contact with as a classical musician. And he seemed like a great conversationalist. He was charismatic and outgoing, and I thought it'd be interesting to get coffee with him at some point.
And did you meet with John again after that night in August of 2020?
Yes, I did.
I want to talk about the period between the time you met John and Aida Mello in August of 2020 until the beginning of October of 2020. During that period of time, how many times did you physically meet with John Mello?
Maybe 6 or 7 times.
When you met with him, was he by himself or was with Aida with him?
With one exception, Aida was always with him.
Tell the jury what the activities you and John and Aida would do together in that period.
We'd get coffee a few times. I saw them and Aida spontaneously because I was performing and they walked out like the first time. We got pizza once. We went to an art gallery, things like that.
Tell the jury what your impressions were of Aida as you got to know her in the late summer, early fall of 2020.
They were extremely positive. She's a really special kid. She was definitely mature beyond her years, like I talked about. She could hold a conversation with adults. She looked you in the eye. She seemed really cultured, like she'd had a lot of exposure to different places. She'd traveled like almost as much as I had. She was always telling me about trips she and her dad had taken, and it was just very evident to me that she was a very healthy, loved child. She clearly loved her dad, and it was obvious that he had done a great job raising her. And I was convinced that she was a happy, healthy kid, and he was a great father.
Let's fast forward to the beginning of October of 2020. When is your birthday?
October 2nd.
On your birthday, October the 2nd, 2020, how did you celebrate your birthday?
At this point, Aida had visitation with her mother, Christina Parcell. So this was the one time I saw John where she wasn't with him. And John wanted to show me some of his favorite taco stands out on Whitehorse Road. So we celebrated my birthday together and went to a couple bars, had dinner, ended up getting tacos at the end of the night.
At the beginning of the night, what was John's mood?
Very festive.
By the end of the night, had his mood changed?
Yes, it had.
Describe what his mood was at the end of the night.
Towards the end, at one of these taco stands, he became very pensive and even distraught. And he started to tell me about really grave concerns he had about his daughter, specifically when his daughter was with her mother, Christina Parcell. And he essentially said that whenever Aida's mother had visitation, he just never could rest easy until he got Aida back. And that he just didn't trust her, and he thought that she wasn't responsible and that she might even hurt her at some point. And I mean, frankly, the mood of the evening took a big dip because of this. It was clear that he just was terrified about the danger his daughter was in, and this made a big impression on me.
So, when you were with John on your birthday of October 2nd, 2020, where were Aida and Christina Parcell?
I believe they were on a road trip to see family, maybe in Alabama or somewhere farther down south.
When was she due back to Greenville?
I believe the next day or in the next couple of days.
When she returned, where were Aida and John going to go?
They were going to go to Italy.
Did John tell you that?
Yes.
When John told you that he and Aida were going to go to Italy, what did you think about that? What was your reaction to that?
I thought it was great. I knew at this point that John's parents were Italian, and Aida, I thought, stood to gain a great cultural experience from it. And I just thought if I had had the opportunity to travel and live in Italy when I was 8, I would have jumped at that. So I was really excited for both of them.
Did they go to Italy?
Yes.
So in October, John and Aida Mello go to Italy. Tell this jury what you're doing in October, November of 2020, musically and otherwise.
At this point, musically, I was still performing on the streets of Greenville, and I was also talking with someone who curated a museum of historic instruments downtown, the Sigel Music Museum. This man was Tom Strange, and we were discussing the possibility of revamping the Beethoven project I had been planning to do that got cut short by COVID by essentially doing the concert series again throughout 2021, but this time recording them so that we wouldn't have to deal with the issue of gatherings with COVID going on.
And did you and Tom Strange solidify a plan for resurrecting the Beethoven project?
Yes, we did.
Just generally speaking, describe for the jury sort of the intensity of the schedule, the intensity of the lead up to that project.
Yeah, so as a classical musician, at least, just because you've played a piece doesn't mean that like you know it forever and you're never going to forget it and it's never going to cost you any more work. It would be like you may have run a marathon once before in your life, but if you haven't trained for a year, it's not going to be easy for you if you go and try to do it again. So I was going to have to relearn all of this repertoire because I had only been playing certain of the sonatas downtown. And with the recording schedule, I was going to be meeting with him. There was going to be other people and other equipment involved. So essentially, I was going to have to commit to a schedule where we'd meet more or less once a week to record one sonata a week throughout 2021 and stick to that schedule. So it was going to be strenuous and a lot of work, and I knew this going into it.
And when was the first recording set to occur on the project with Tom Strange?
I think around January 2021.
And beginning in January, how many performances on the project? What was the time frame on the remaining performances on the project?
Again, it was roughly one a week. These sonatas are not all the same length. Some are short as like 12 minutes. Others, one lasts about 45 minutes. So depending on the piece, we were allocating enough time for me to get ready.
All right, so let's talk about from, again, October to April of 2020. John and Aida leave in October. Between October and April, describe to the jury what the communications were you were having with John Mello, the frequency of the communications. Just tell them about it.
Like I said, I was excited for them. I was excited for Aida to be able to have this experience. Based on what John had told me about Aida's mother, I thought it was good that there was distance in between them. And our communications had died off a bit after they left. John is interesting. He's also a lot. He's a very dramatic person, and it was a bit of a relief to just not be running into him downtown all the time because I had a lot of practice I was doing, and sometimes I didn't have time to hang out as much as he might have wanted to. So our communications petered out.
Were you relieved in some ways that your communications with him had slowed down or stopped?
To a degree, yeah.
Right. In April of 2021, did your communications with John and the frequency of them increase dramatically?
Yes.
Why did your communications with John increase dramatically in April of 2021?
Like I said, our communications had petered out, but they hadn't completely ceased. So he had let me know that Christina Parcell, Aida's mother, had been filing, I think, some stuff with the family court in Greenville in order to try to get her daughter back. He was very worried that she might succeed in doing this for reasons I've already spoken about. And in April, he sent me a message, and it was clear from the text that he was very upset, just saying that, Zach, they took Aida. What am I going to do? Something about along those lines.
After he told you in April of 2021 that they had taken Aida, did he begin to tell you in greater detail what his concerns were and more information about his concerns?
Yes.
What happened next?
At this point, I found myself in kind of a conundrum because, like I said, I had appreciated having some distance from John. But by the same token, I was becoming increasingly more concerned about his daughter, Aida. So while I might have wanted to not continue communicating with John for the sake of his daughter, I felt that I had a certain sense of responsibility to help him with what he was dealing with this custody battle for his daughter's sake. We began communicating probably every day, at least by text, often by phone calls. I was giving a lot of time towards hearing what he had to say, towards trying to help him in any way I could. Some of the things I did to help him were, first, he needed counsel. He needed a lawyer in family court. So I was calling a bunch of lawyers in Greenville, trying to find someone who could help him, and by helping him, help Aida. I ended up cleaning his house in Greenville. He had left it with a tenant who absolutely trashed it. It was like nothing I'd ever seen. Like the air was hardly breathable. So I was buying a dehumidifier, getting cleaning supplies, hiring Mikey Manigo, who testified last week, to help me clean out his house so that he would have a place to show family court, that he had a home that would be a safe place for a little girl and him to be living in. I told him when he came back, I'd pick him up from the airport. But notably, while we were having these conversations, he began to tell me in much more detail what his concerns were about Christina Parcell. And, well, in order for you to understand what my reaction was to what he was telling me, you need to know what my experience was with my oldest adopted sibling, Grace. So when we adopted these kids, we really didn't know much about them.
Objection, Your Honor. May we